Hi, friends. Welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. This is episode 197. I'm so excited to share this episode with you. I have been really having so much fun diving deeply into some different topics for a project I'm working on that you'll find out about in this episode. And it's gotten me re-excited about some things that I love talking about, like helping your kids find their interests and their passions and fanning that flame. So we're going to talk about that in today's episode, and I can't wait to hear from you at the end of the episode what kinds of things you're doing. So listen, and then please share, okay? All right, I want to do a quick shout out. CTC Math, thank you so much for continuing to sponsor the podcast and help support what we're doing here. We really appreciate you. Check out ctcmath.com. I'll talk a little bit about it later in this episode, and you can find out more at ctcmath.com. Okay, here we go. We're going to dive into this great episode. Pop your earbuds in and tackle those dishes or that laundry. Oh my gosh, we've got so much laundry here, so I might need to take my own advice and go listen to some podcasts and tackle it. And let me know what your greatest takeaway was from this episode. All right, let's get on with today's episode. Hey there. Okay, so this topic comes up a lot, and I've talked about it in a lot of different ways, but I've been knee-deep in research. I'm so excited. Okay, so first, let me start by telling you why I'm so excited. I've mentioned this, I think, briefly. If you've been to some of my talks at conventions this season, you've heard about this, but I'm super excited. I am working on a book project. I'm not going to tell you a ton about it because I'm deep in the throes of the research portion of it. But I'm super excited because the book is slated to come out in July of 2024, if all goes well with the whole process of it. And I'm going to be spending a lot of time deep diving into the idea of what it takes to raise lifelong learners, to build up our kids, to follow their interests, to learn alongside of them, to help instill them with the idea that learning for its own sake is a worthy pursuit, and that nobody needs to know everything because there's so many things to discover. And so anyway, I'm just super excited about it. And every time I dive deeper into this topic, I get more convicted that homeschooling, especially for our gifted, twice exceptional, and otherwise neurodivergent kids, is the perfect educational choice because we get to meet them where they are, and we get to move them forward, and we get to take all these deep dives into their interests and their passions and the things that light them up. And they get to see us do the same. We can spend our own lives learning alongside of them and taking our own deep dives into things, which is why this book has been so exciting, because I love this topic. I love learning about how the brain works. I super duper enjoy researching and finding out how to encourage our kids and help them be better versions of themselves. And so this idea of nurturing passions and interests in ourselves and our kids is just super amazing and incredible and a gift. And I am so passionate about it and so excited about it. And so over the next several months, I will probably be doing some episodes like this where I'm sharing some of the stuff that I'm discovering as I'm diving into different research materials and chapters and sections of this book as it evolves. And so I hope you get as excited as I am about it as we go forward. So anyway, today I want to talk about just how important it is to help our kids find interests and passions and then help them nurture them. And then in turn, nurture that idea in them that they can keep discovering. I was just having a conversation with one of my kids the other day that at the core of the conversation was the idea that it's not our job as parents and teachers and homeschoolers in any environment to impart all the knowledge there is on our kids, right? That's impossible. And there's no educational setting anywhere where people don't graduate and end it with gaps. And as soon as we admit that to ourselves, whether we're homeschooled kids who put a lot of pressure on ourselves because some do, right? I know my kids do. Or we're parents who are doing all the things and putting pressure on ourselves to graduate our kids with all of the information they need to know. It doesn't matter who we are. It can be so freeing to know that there's nobody out there that graduates high school knowing everything. That'd just be silly. What we really want our kids to graduate high school knowing when it comes down to academics is that there's no answer they can't find. There's no question they can't discover the answer to with just asking questions or admitting they don't know something or doing a Google search or reading a book or watching a video or engaging a mentor to help teach them. And as soon as we ourselves as parents and then in turn our kids accept the idea that asking questions is actually the smart thing, not knowing and admitting we don't know is actually the best sign of intelligence, we free ourselves up to just explore and to learn what we need to learn when we need to learn it. This discussion sparked initially because one of my kids was comparing themselves to some friends who are in private schools and taking advanced placement classes and things like that. And this child was worried that they were actually behind and not as smart as their friends. And I said, okay, well, let's explore this a little bit. What is it you don't know? And this child was talking about a paper one of their friends was writing, comparing different dates in history and things that had happened in the past to things that have happened in current events. And I said, okay, well, you don't know the dates. You're right about that. But how would you find out the dates if you needed to know that? And this child was like, well, I Google it. Okay, well, go Google it. And then let me know what the answer is. And so they did. And I said, you've read a little bit about that. Just glance through this article that you just pulled up with the dates and read a little bit more. And then let's talk about this. How does that event compare to things that are going on today? And so that child skimmed while I sat there. And then we had this fantastic discussion about what they had gotten out of that quick skim in comparison to things that are going on in current events. And I said, okay, you just dictated the paper your friend is staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning writing, and you'll remember this conversation because you initiated it. Much more than that kiddo is going to remember the paper they turn in because they were assigned that paper. And so you're not dumber than the kids in that school system. You just haven't had the need to find that information out yet. And as soon as you do, you'll have a reason to find it out. So your reason for finding it out will ensure you remember it better. And it was a great light bulb moment and a great conversation. And then that led into the discussion of some of the things that I want to talk about today, specifically why it's so important to take advantage of the opportunity we have as homeschoolers to help our kids find their passion, pursue it relentlessly, and enjoy the process of that. So first, let's talk about why that's even important. Why is it important for kids to have a passion in the first place? Well, it's important for kids to have a passion and develop these interests because it brings them a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and frankly, joy. They enjoy their life better. When kiddos are engaged in activities or pursuing something that they're passionate about, they're more likely to be motivated, dedicated, and committed to their goals. My oldest daughter is a prime example of this. She wants to pursue musical theater in college. So we've been doing a lot of research. She's a sophomore. Most people start midway through their junior year or like at the cusp of their junior year to kind of get started on the process to explore all that goes into the college application and audition process for musical theater programs. And let me tell you, it's super scary. If any of you out there listening are getting ready to engage in this, talk about deep diving. I have been deep diving what it takes to pursue this avenue and how different it is from just the regular college application process and how nuanced it can be. And so I already have reams and reams of research. And if you just want to cry on each other's shoulders over the next couple of years, just shoot me an email through the contact form over on the show notes for this episode, and we can talk through some of it. But one of the almost startling, actually, it wasn't almost startling, it was incredibly startling statistics that I found when I was kind of researching this, because a lot of these programs, most of these programs are super duper competitive, and competitive in ways that you don't expect when you're pursuing going to college. And one of the stats that I was reading was the acceptance rates of Yale and Princeton and Cornell versus some of the top 3 musical theater programs. I think they compared Ithaca, Syracuse, and I forget what the other one was. It might have been like Wright State University or something like that. In any case, the acceptance rates to these Ivies were around like anywhere between like 6 or 7%, like 8%. And that's from all of the applicants that are applying to these schools. And then they compared that acceptance rates to the acceptance rates of these top 3 musical theater programs. They're in the top 10. And the acceptance rates, none of the acceptance rates for these musical theater programs were over 1%. All of them were more like 0.7%, 0.1%, 0.4%, because we're not just talking about getting into a program. We're talking about getting into a program that takes between like 13 and 30 kids. And then when you take those, say 30, immediately you're actually only competing for 15 spots, because 15 are likely, roughly, going to go to a boy and 15 are likely, roughly, going to go to a girl. And then of those 15 slots that are left, like 5 might be for sopranos, 5 might be for mezzos, 5 might be for altos, or a variety of different voice types. And then so now you're down to like 5 or 10 if you can cross over into different ranges. And then within those 5 to 10 slots that are left, your kiddo is actually competing for a variety of types and sizes and acting abilities and dancing abilities and other talents, because the program needs to be well-rounded. And so the actual number of slots that they're competing for is like 3 or 4 at most. And so it's very, very difficult. But when our kids develop that passion and own it and get involved in it, they're committed. This kiddo of mine is the most committed kid I've met. She is relentless in her training. She's taking private dance classes one-on-one with a dance instructor because she knows that's her weakest area, and she has got 2 years, 3 years, because she's been doing it for a year now, to get her dancing up to speed. And the transformation in the last year has been stunning. Her tapping is coming along like crazy. And she takes vocal lessons. We've bumped up from a half an hour a week to 45 minutes, and we're getting ready to go into an hour a week. She also does an hour of a cappella training a week. And she's in an improv troupe to develop her acting. She works with a private acting coach. She auditions for every play and musical she can, because the audition process and practice is just as important as the performing aspect. And she does all these things while maintaining really strong relationships with friends and family, and while building her grades up and exploring new concepts and finding interests and hobbies. She's fascinating, and she's committed and dedicated and motivated. Passions help drive that in our kids. Having these passions can help them develop life skills like problem solving and critical thinking and creativity and perseverance. They transfer to other areas of their lives and help them succeed in future endeavors. This kiddo knows that at some point, while she wants to be on Broadway or be in a national tour someday, at some point in her career, she's going to want to retire and settle down and have a family and raise kids. And so she also wants to pursue vocal training for education so she can coach young people because she's been so inspired by her voice coach. And so she wants that training in addition so someday she can give back like her teacher has given to her. And so these passions help them see their future in a way that they can see themselves succeeding. In addition, it builds self-confidence. We just talked about self-confidence and self-esteem in last week's episode. It builds a positive self-image. When they feel good about themselves and their talents and their abilities, they're more likely to have a positive attitude, be more resilient, handle setbacks and challenges with greater ease. And this isn't just for like performing arts or sports or something tangible like this. This could be computer programming or art or music, or interpersonal skills. Maybe your kid's passion and interest is understanding others and helping them understand themselves. Or maybe it's nurturing animals or exploring like homesteading and raising chicks in the backyard or whatever. Whatever it is that we help them discover and pursue builds this confidence and this resilience in a way that encourages them to be super cool contributors to society. And having a passion in any way, shape, or form can provide our kids with a sense of identity and belonging. And let's face it, everyone is looking for that these days. We want our kids to identify and feel as if they belong because of who they are and how they contribute, instead of some random thing somebody else puts on their shoulders. We want them to discover that, and as homeschoolers, we get to help them tap into those little things that are interesting, that can grow into these passions and fan those flames so that they build these interests and these connections and a sense of community with others who like the same things, and build friendships that frankly can last a lifetime for them. Okay, so clearly you know that I love CTC Math. They are sponsoring the podcast this season, so I'm talking about it all season long, but I want to make sure that you know a couple different features. I've talked about how it's great flexibility-wise, but let me tell you a little bit more about that flexibility. First of all, you get, like I've said before, unlimited access to all lessons across all grade levels. That means one subscription gives you kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade math, basic math, pre-algebra, elementary measurement, elementary geometry, all of those things that kids in middle school might need to review before going on to high school math. It gives you Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, trigonometry, pre-calc, and calculus. It's amazing. You get all of those levels with one subscription. One of the things I love most, though, is a new feature that they've rolled out, all about mastery-based education, meaning they give kids the chance to continue going through a concept until they reach the highest level of difficulty in that particular concept. So if you're using it for a mastery-based approach and you use this feature, every time your kiddo answers a question, the program chooses the next question based on an adaptive algorithm. And what that means is the questions adjust in difficulty based on your kiddo's ability, meaning those kids who are motivated to do more and well in math and really enjoy it can challenge themselves to attempt a wider range of questions, building this solid foundation. It unlocks questions that are more and more challenging with a greater depth for those kiddos who are math-based, math thinkers, and think that they want to get into some kind of math career. And it increases confidence and their enjoyment of math overall for those kids, like I said, who are really mathy. Parents have a better measure of their kiddos' understanding of the lesson. They can identify gaps in their kiddos' knowledge where maybe further work might be needed. And it allows them to facilitate an individualized learning approach to math so your kiddos are truly learning at their own pace. It's amazing. You can check out the description of the mastery-based approach along with a short video explaining it at ctcmath.com/mastery. Or you can go over to the show notes for this episode and you can click on the CTC Math link to find out more. Okay, let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out, and let's get back to today's episode. Overall, helping our kids discover these passions can contribute to their well-being, their happiness, and a sense of self as they explore their own lives and become who they're meant to be. Okay, so how do we identify these in our kids? How do we even figure out what they might be interested in? Like for my daughter, it was super obvious early on. When she got the first part in the first musical she was ever in, you could see the light go on and it has not dimmed. And so that one was obvious. But I still have two kids that I cannot figure out exactly. Well, one, she's really leaning into animals, though the types of animals have changed from like zookeeping to training to backyard farm kind of animals to now aquatic animals. And so we don't know where she's going to go or what she's going to do, but we know that it's going to be something with animals. And so I keep exploring and helping her explore other animals. Whereas the youngest, he's just not sure yet. He's still dabbling. His biggest interests are video games and Legos right now, like any 10-year-old boy, and that's fine. But how do we help identify what these interests and these passions are so that we can help them dive deeper into them? Well, first, I've said it before, you're probably rolling your eyes because you're already expecting this to come out of my mouth. We need to become students of our kids. We need to observe our kids, pay attention to what our kids like to do in their free time. Are they gravitating towards certain interests and hobbies? Do you see them doing the same thing over and over again when they're bored or have open time? Are there things they seem particularly interested in or curious about? Are they asking you questions? Are they going to a certain area when you go shopping at a store? Or are they looking at maybe certain types of videos on YouTube or on the streaming service, whatever streaming service you subscribe to? Are they hanging out with kids who all seem to be interested in the same thing? What are those things that they're interested in? And then once you start to observe them, ask them questions. Ask a lot of questions. And this is kind of tough to do, especially as a parent. But try really hard to listen more than you talk. Ask questions and then ask more questions. And then ask more questions. And then ask more questions. Keep encouraging your kids to talk about whatever it is they're interested in and help cultivate that in them, right? Help encourage that dialogue so that they want to talk to you about their interests and their hobbies, even if you're bored, okay? I don't enjoy talking about Minecraft. I don't actually even enjoy talking about the Lego set that was just recently built, but I will listen. And then I will ask questions, or I will say, wow, that's really interesting. How did you come up with that? And I will ask these open-ended questions that encourage them to keep sharing their thoughts and feelings about what they're doing, why they did it, what their motivation is, what drew them to it, and I keep them talking. The more I keep them talking, the deeper they go in helping me see what it was about it that made them feel good about their actions or their activities or why they even went towards that in the first place, which could help me see something else they might like. So it may spark something that reminds me of a kit I saw or something else that I could pull off a shelf or I could order and help them see other ways to use that interest or that talent. Also, we want to provide options for our kids. We want to give them different opportunities to try new things and explore different interests. So this can include formal things like signing them up for classes or clubs. It could include taking them to museums or cultural events, or just simply exposing them to a variety of experiences and interests, living history events, festivals, carnivals, fine arts shows, music in the park, Shakespeare in the park, the opera, high school musicals, whatever it might be that's coming to your community. And so we want to look around and see what's coming up so we can help them see lots of different things. Like, I know my oldest does not enjoy going to plays and musicals. He just doesn't. He did theater for a little while and he liked some of it, but he didn't love it. Now, he's still living at our home. And so the rule is when you're living in our house, you support everybody who's in our house. Which means if a kid is in a show, everybody will go to at least one show in that run. If somebody is playing basketball, which my youngest did this past season, everyone will go to at least one game. And so we support each other, even if it's not something that's interesting to us. But just by the nature of supporting each other, we are being exposed to things we may not have been exposed to otherwise. So it has a value in that. And so we want to expose our kids to lots of different opportunities and to try new things, to explore different avenues, read different kinds of books, whatever it is. And then we want to see patterns. We want to notice patterns. We want to look for patterns in our kiddos' behavior or preferences. Are they consistently choosing certain types of activities or subjects over others? Are there themes or topics that consistently come up in their conversations or their interests? One of my kids is fascinated, my youngest actually, is fascinated by video games right now. And it's not atypical for a 10-year-old boy, and I'm not super worried about it. I am annoyed by it often because he'll choose to just grab the iPad or the computer or the Switch before I've caffeinated and have gotten him started on whatever it is. In fact, it's not my proudest parenting style, but it is something that we've done time and again when we've needed to kind of reset things. I have a locked file cabinet in my office that doesn't really have very many files in it. It has things like tablets when we need a break or we need to help build the habit of doing other things first, and snacks that are special snacks for like when we go places or when we're having someone over that I don't want to be obliterated before the event actually happens, things like that. And so if I need to reset and help my kids choose other things, I'll lock up the devices or whatever first. But that kid is very interested right now. And so I'm trying to help him see that a really good rule of thumb, especially for online or screen-like behaviors that are more passive, a good rule of thumb for that is to create more than he consumes. So if he's sitting there passively for hours and hours on end, just consuming the video game or the video about the video game or whatever it is, then he's living a very passive life and he's not really using his own creativity or his own interests or his own talents to contribute in any way, shape, or form. But if he creates and he does that more often than he consumes stuff, he would still need to consume because I read to help me be a better writer. I consume other people's work and words because that helps me make points. It builds my research background. It builds my knowledge base. But my goal is to always create more than I consume so that my words are original. And so we want the same thing in our kids. So I've recently pulled out some old coding books that my oldest had used when he was younger and reintroduced him to Scratch Junior and some things like that because I want him to be creating video games and not just playing them. And then finally, follow your kiddo's lead. Allow them to take the lead in their own exploration of interests and passions. Be supportive and provide guidance as needed, but give them space to discover what they enjoy and let them pursue it on their own terms whenever possible. Identifying a kiddo's interests and passions, it's a process. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes attention. And so the best thing that you can do when you're helping your kids explore and understand how to do this and find out what their passions and interests are is to be open-minded and flexible as they explore, and then encourage them to try new things and take risks along the way. And the best thing is about all of this is that homeschooling provides an ideal environment for us to nurture our kiddos' passions. We have a personalized learning environment, right? Kids can learn at their own pace. They can focus on subjects and interests that light them up. My daughter can spend more time in the fine arts areas than any other subject, far more than she would be able to if she were in a traditional school setting. This personalized approach allows them to dive deeper into topics they're passionate about, and that leads to greater engagement and motivation because when we build on their passions and their strengths, they're able to sustain interest in their weaker areas more easily than if they were forced to focus on their weaknesses more. It also allows us the flexibility to tailor their learning to each of their individual and unique needs. We can choose curriculum or materials or resources or none at all in a way that aligns with our kids' passions and provides a more engaging and stimulating experience of learning and helps them see that learning for its own sake is the value, is the thing. And we can also give them time. Everything else can take way less time, so they have more time to explore the things they're super interested in. They can dedicate more time to extracurriculars, to hobbies, to projects that align with their passions, and they'll start to feel more fulfilled because they're developing the talents and skills they want to. And then finally, we can find ways to individualize the support that they need. Like my daughter, who has private acting coaching, private voice coaching, private dance coaching as she's preparing for that college audition process. I have the time and the flexibility to do that. I buy her less curriculum and we find more free resources online so that we can invest the money that we'd be spending otherwise in those private lessons. We get to find ways to nurture their passions. We get to encourage them to be who they're meant to be and help them find ways to dive deeply into what makes them them more than any other educational opportunity that's out there. It's exciting. It's fun. And the best part of this all is it helps us grow closer to them because we're excited about who they're becoming. So it helps them be more excited about who they're becoming. And then again, it leads to greater motivation and engagement. Okay, here's what I want to know from you. I want to know what you do to nurture your kids' passions and interests. I want to know how you find those little sparks and fan them and help them ignite into this amazing, interesting thing that makes your kids amazing and interesting. So head on over to the show notes for this episode at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast and check out the resources that are related to this topic, but also hit record on the voicemail widget that's there. Send me a message telling me what you do to spark your kids' flames and light up their passions and interests, or shoot me an email. The contact form that's linked there goes directly to my inbox. I would love to hear from you. I'd also love it if you'd forward this podcast onto anybody else that you know who is struggling with helping their kids find their interests or wants to have a more relaxed and interest-led homeschool and lifestyle so that they can feel empowered too. So share it, share it, share it. Leave a rating or review if you feel led to, because it really does help. And share with me what you do to help your kids. You're a great parent, and I know you've got some really good ideas, and so I would love to hear them. All right, we're going to be back next week, same time, same place, with another great episode. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to hear what you and your kids are up to and how you spark the flames of your own kids' passions. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.